slavery refers to the exploitation of individuals through coercion, deception, or abuse of power, where they are forced to do something they are not willing to do. In the past, especially during colonization, individuals were forced into labor such as agriculture, construction, and domestic servitude. The transatlantic slave trade from the 16th to 19th century was a significant and terrible event where millions of Africans were forced and taken to America. This trade was led by the European colonial expansion. Slaves were used for labor on plantations, especially crops like sugar, tobacco, and cotton. Slavery has existed in various forms since ancient civilizations. In ancient Greece, Rome, Egypt, and Mesopotamia, slavery was an integral part of economic and social systems. Slaves were often prisoners of war, debtors, or born into servitude. Slavery in this context was diverse, with some slaves holding significant positions of power or influence, examples in households or temples, while others were treated as property. Modern-day slavery is the result of a long history of exploitation, beginning with the ancient practices and intensifying during the transatlantic slave trade. Though formal slavery was abolished in the 19th century, systems of economic and racial inequality continue with practices like sharecropping and convict leasing in the U.S. and colonial exploitation worldwide. Today, slavery persists in different forms, and particularly in industries like agriculture, manufacturing, and more. Globalization, weak labor laws, and poverty have fueled the issue. International efforts through organizations like the UN and NGOs aim to combat modern-day slavery and support victims. Human trafficking is when people are forced or tricked into doing things against their will, like working in dangerous jobs or being involved in illegal activities. Victims, often faced with false promises or threats, are controlled by people known as traffickers and made to work without proper pay to none or the freedom to leave. This can happen in many industries like farming, factories, or domestic work. It's a serious crime affecting millions of people. Forced labor is when people are made to work under threats, coercion, or deception, without the freedom to leave or choose their work. Victims don't get fair payments or no payments and are subjected to harsh conditions in industries like agriculture, construction, and manufacturing. They may be threatened with violence, abuse, or even imprisonment if they try to escape. Forced labor is a form of exploitation that takes advantage of vulnerable individuals and is illegal in most countries, though it still persists in many parts of the world. Child labor is when children are forced to work instead of going to school or enjoying a childhood. They are often made to work in dangerous conditions such as in factories, farms, or as domestic helpers, or go and sell things to people. These children don't get access to proper education and are often exposed to harm or abuse. Child labor is a serious issue, especially in poorer regions where families don't have enough money, so they make their kids go work as well. Or those who are born into a family with abusive parents or parents who can't take care of themselves. Domestic servitude, abusive, is where individuals, often women and children, are forced to work in households as maids or nannies under abusive conditions. They are typically made to work long hours with little to no pay and are often restricted from leaving or seeking help. Victims of domestic servitude face physical and emotional abuse, and their basic rights are violated. Debt bondage, also known as bonded labor, occurs when people are forced to work to repay a debt, but the terms are unfair that they can never escape the cycle. The amount owed often keeps increasing, making it impossible to pay off. Victims, including entire families, are trapped in dangerous or degrading work, such as in agriculture or brick making, and are often denied fair work. Organ harvesting is an illegal and unethical practice where people are forcibly or deceptively made to give up their organs, usually for sale on the black market. Victims are often tricked, coerced, or abducted, and their organs are removed without consent and sold for transplants. Sometimes victims are dead people, and people take the organs of dead people without them agreeing to it before they passed away. This crime is a severe violation of human rights and is often linked to human trafficking networks. Forced marriage is a situation where one or both individuals are forced to get married against their will, often through threats, coercion, or manipulation. It is a violation of human rights as a person's freedom to choose their partner is taken away. Victims of forced marriage may experience physical and emotional abuse and may be trapped in unhealthy or dangerous relationships. This practice continues in some parts of the world such as India, Somalia, Bangladesh, etc. Physical abuse in the context of modern-day slavery involves victims being subjected to violent acts such as beatings, torture, and harsh punishments. This abuse is often used as means of control to instill fear and prevent victims from escaping or resisting. Victims may suffer from severe injuries, malnutrition, or illness due to the lack of proper care, and many endure long-term physical trauma as a result of constant mistreatment. This type of abuse not only causes immediate harm but can also lead to lasting physical disabilities or even death. Psychological trauma in the context of modern-day slavery affects deeply the victims in both short and long term. Victims endure severe emotional and mental harm, including anxiety, depression, PTSD, dissociation, and nightmares. This can be caused by physical abuse, isolation, and constant fear, leading to profound loss of autonomy and identity. The trauma can last long even after escaping or being rescued, as victims struggle to build their sense of self and trust in others, often facing systemic barriers to recovery and support. In modern-day slavery, victims experience a profound loss of autonomy and identity as they are stripped of basic freedoms and control over their own lives. Their actions, movements, and choices are often dictated by their captors, leaving them feeling powerless and invisible. This constant manipulation and coercion erode their sense of self-worth, making it difficult to recognize their own desires, values, or aspirations. The loss of autonomy and identity is compounded by isolation, as victims are separated from their families and communities, further deepening the feeling of being trapped in a cycle of exploitation and dehumanization. Social isolation is a critical aspect of modern-day slavery, where victims are deliberately cut off from family, friends, and their support networks. They may be confined in hidden or remote locations, preventing any contact with the outside world. This isolation deepens their vulnerability, making it difficult for them to seek help or escape their circumstances. Victims often experience extreme loneliness, alienation, and despair, as they are denied the opportunity to form meaningful relationships or receive emotional support, further entrenching their sense of helplessness and powerlessness. Victims of modern-day slavery often face severe health issues due to physical abuse, poor living conditions, and lack of access to medical care. Many endure malnutrition, untreated injuries, and chronic illnesses, which are exacerbated by the grueling physical labor they are forced to perform. The constant stress and trauma can also lead to long-term mental health problems, such as anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Without proper healthcare or the ability to seek treatment, these health problems can become life-threatening, leaving victims with lasting physical and psychological scars. Victims of modern-day slavery are often denied access to education and economic opportunities, trapping them in a cycle of poverty and exploitation. They lack the skills or qualifications to secure stable, well-paying jobs. This educational disadvantage limits their ability to break free from the conditions of slavery or build a better future. Additionally, victims are typically exploited for their labor with little or no compensation, further entrenching their economic vulnerability. Even after escaping, they often struggle to find work or rebuild their lives, as those trauma and lack of resources hinder their path to independence and financial stability. After escaping modern-day slavery, victims often face significant stigma and rejection, as society may see them as damaged or tainted by their experiences. This social stigma can make reintegration difficult, as survivors may encounter discrimination, judgment, or a lack of understanding from others. The shame associated with their past exploitation can further isolate them, preventing them from seeking help or rebuilding relationships. As a result, many victims struggle with feelings of worthlessness and alienation, hindering their ability to heal and move forward in life. People from poor backgrounds or regions are often targeted by traffickers who may promise them better job opportunities or a better life in a different country or city, but only to exploit them, and at the end, they get nothing. Individuals with limited education or knowledge about their rights are more likely to fall prey to traffickers, especially when they are misled by false promises of employment, shelter, or education. Women and children are mostly vulnerable to exploitation, forced labor, or domestic servitude. Gender inequality and the subjugation of women in some societies can also contribute to higher vulnerability. Children in particular may be exploited for labor as soldiers, etc. Refugees, migrants, and people who have been displaced due to war, conflict, natural disasters, or those looking for better opportunities, etc., are mostly at risk. They may have limited resources, lack social support networks, and may be in desperate need of employment or protection, making them easy targets for traffickers. In countries or regions with weak governance, corruption, or poor law enforcement, traffickers can operate with impunity, making it harder for victims to seek help and for authorities to intervene. Some victims of modern-day slavery are coerced or manipulated by people they know, including family members, friends, and romantic partners. This can involve forced labor or exploitation, where trust is exploited to control the victim. Victims who are isolated from their families, communities, or social networks are at greater risk. Isolation can be physical, example locked in a house, or emotional, example manipulated or brainwashed to believe they have no other options. Individuals with addiction to substances may be coerced into slavery as traffickers take advantage of their weakness, promising them substances or a way out of addiction in exchange for servitude. In the digital age, traffickers use the internet, social media, and dating apps to get victims. They may promise jobs, love, or connections for forced labor, organ trafficking, etc. These factors are interconnected, and traffickers often use a combination of manipulation, deceit, and violence to maintain control over their victims. That addresses the main causes of modern-day slavery and requires a multifaceted approach, including education, economic empowerment, better legal frameworks, and increased public awareness. Anti-Slavery International. Founded in 1839, the Anti-Slavery International is the world's oldest human rights organization. It works to end all forms of slavery. Walk Free. Walk Free is a global movement that is committed in ending modern-day slavery. It works with governments, businesses, and civil society to raise awareness and take action against it. Save the Children. Save the Children is dedicated to fighting against all types of modern-day slavery that children go through, provides direct support to affected children, and advocates for policy changes. Tackling modern-day slavery requires a multifaceted approach, starting with stronger legal frameworks and enforcement. Governments must implement stricter laws to combat human trafficking and forced labor while ensuring that law enforcement agencies have the training and resources to investigate and prosecute offenders. Additionally, international cooperation is essential as many trafficking networks operate across borders. Collaboration between countries, NGOs, and organizations like Interpol can help dismantle these operations and provide support for victims. Public awareness campaigns also play a crucial role in educating communities about the signs of slavery and empowering individuals to take action when they suspect exploitation. In addition to legal reforms, addressing the root causes of modern-day slavery is vital. Poverty, lack of education, and political instability often make individuals vulnerable to exploitation. By investing in education, economic development, and social safety nets, societies can reduce the risk factors that lead people into slavery. Companies also need to take responsibility by ensuring ethical supply chains and actively working to eliminate forced labor in their operations. Consumer awareness is equally important by choosing to support ethical businesses and advocating for greater transparency. Individuals can drive demand for change and help end slavery once and for all.